Good evening. The 10th of the 12th, we are getting closer to Christmas in 2015. It is myself, Paul. This week we have Ryan with us. Unfortunately, Colin couldn't make it due to being in the United States, and it is still the middle of the day there. But we have replaced him with a special guest, and he is special indeed. Mr. Statistical Approach. Thank you for coming on, sir.
No problem at all. Thanks ever so much for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Delighted to have you on, especially early on in the Football Manager 2016 cycle.
Yeah, it's a great time of year for anyone who's into FM, that's for sure.
I think one of the first things I wanted to talk about this week was to kind of just come to yourself first off, and it was it's kind of because we're early on in the cycle of FM16. I wanted to talk about how you're getting to grips with the game, and I think it's unique for yourself because you're still dipping back into FM15 because of Stamford struggles.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's I'm in a pretty unique situation because I'm assuming not many people are flicking in between the two, so there's a direct comparison. I would say first and foremost, FM16 is absolutely awesome. I've said that loads of times when people will ask me on Twitter, is it worth buying the game and so on. I think it's, a far more polished version. I think some people were a tad disappointed when the features were announced and there weren't too many massive changes. There were a few here and there, draft mode and so on, but I just think polished is probably the phrase I would use because nearly everything's been built on or improved on tactically. It's so much more fun, kind of more realistic. But I think really just going back to FM15 and then coming into FM16 just cements that view that it is, a lot more fun. It's more challenging, so more satisfying if you do well. Whereas in FM15, it did seem, I guess, a little bit easier tactically.
I think I can't remember the exact figure, so I do apologise. But I know you tweeted somebody mentioned the amount of episodes Stamford's up to now.
Yeah, it's just past 320. Another episode came out today, and funnily enough, tomorrow is the last ever episode of Stamford Struggle.
Oh, that's sad times. I will admit I've fallen about a week behind on that. But I've still been enjoying it, and like I say, it kept many people going all the way through FM15. So I assume it's one of your proudest, if not the most proud series that you've done.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think I would always look back to Celtic in England because that was kind of the first long playthrough series that I did on my channel that, for want of a better phrase, kind of launched me within the FM community and got people to know a little bit more about me and have some interest with the channel. But yeah, Stamford Struggle, I would probably say, is the biggest achievement just on the basis of how long it's been going, and B, just how much I've enjoyed the save itself. Not only has the series been a lot of fun, the actual save in itself's probably been the best save I've ever had on any version of FM. So to get this far in, probably over a year now, 320 plus episodes, and as you said, people are still sticking with it all the way to the end. I've had messages and comments today saying you can't end it in this way. Obviously, I won't spoil what we're up to in terms of how close we're getting to the ending or what might transpire, but a lot of people want me to just keep going. Someone even suggested starting a separate channel just for Stamford Struggle so we can have FM15 content on forever. So a lot of people really don't want to let go of it, which is nice. Obviously, everything has to come to an end at one point, but it's pretty touching that people have become so attached to an FM series. It's great stuff.
I think one thing I like to do, and this is going to sound extremely nerdy for people listening, is I like to Google people's series titles or just in general the name to see how popular it is. And if you type in Stamford, especially Stamford Football Club, for example, you come up in the top 3. Which is it's impressive that you are up there alongside the actual club in terms of Google recognition. So I think that's something to definitely be proud of. Has the football club ever at any point messaged you on Twitter?
No, they haven't. I've listened to obviously listened to this show before, and I think you've mentioned it on Twitter and stuff, how you've been in touch with FC United, and I know other people have. I think Cleon with his blog talks about a little while ago how he'd been in touch with a couple of football clubs, but I never reached out to them, and they certainly haven't done the same, which I guess looking back is a little bit of a shame now that it's nearly all over. But just what you said there about Google is absolutely awesome. I'd never done that myself, so it's pretty cool to think it's in the top 3 for what is essentially kind of a made-up concept compared to the actual real football club.
Yeah, it's definitely something. As soon as we finish, just get yourself on Google and type in Stamford.
No, definitely will, yeah.
I think just to quickly mention the FM community. I think FM Scout Jack. It is Jack from FM Scout who's done the White Hawk save.
Right.
I know the football club has messaged him many times, and they actually sent him a letter about his performance as well, which I thought was very cool. So if we're talking about people's communication with football clubs, it's definitely I think it's becoming more of a closer connection between clubs. Clubs are kind of understanding the power of Football Manager now. So when they get some recognition, or they get 100 or 200 followers randomly on Twitter because of somebody managing them on Football Manager, they end up dropping them that special tweet. So we should maybe start a tweet StatApp to Stamford.
Yeah, no, that's probably a good call. I think one of the reasons for it is FM themselves, Sports Interactive, have done a really good job in recent years with all of the Pro Zone stuff, having links with clubs, having links with Opta, and so on. So it kind of bridges the gap, whereas I think even maybe 2-3 years ago, certainly further away, 10 years ago, it was, Football Manager was almost classed as a bit of not a joke, but a game, which it is, of course, and pretend, whereas I think Sky Sports is another great example, using the stats on Sky Sports News. It's just bridged the gap and made it's kind of blurred the lines a little bit, if you like, between real football and FM, which is fantastic for us in the FM community. It gets taken more seriously and opens up a lot of doors in that regard, so it's all great stuff.
Definitely. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying there. It's definitely, it's down to Sports Interactive, as you say. The way they've improved and developed the game has just kind of made the clubs use it, which has then made the clubs respect and kind of give time to content providers, be it website, YouTube, or any kind of base. I mean, we obviously had FC United Manchester's radio station on our show, on our football show a few weeks ago as well, which is it's fantastic, and it does it all because of Football Manager.
Yeah.
I think talking about getting a grip with the game, I just want to go to Ryan for a second. I just want to ask Ryan, how are you settling in then? I know you're doing your save on the website with Egerson at the minute. How are you finding the game compared to FM16? Now you've had a few weeks to get used to it.
Yeah, a few weeks, a few months. I've really enjoyed it. Flying with the Egerson save, flying through the leagues. You can see, well, anyone will know who's following it. I've been back-to-back promoted, so top of the league. So there are lots of changes, and changes are a massive thing on FM16. Tactics. You can't just stick to one tactic. You've got to keep adapting and changing, and that's been apparent all across my save. I'm playing teams of a different quality now. I'm playing the likes of Mulder, Strom, Godset.
Strom's Godset.
Yeah, that one. And all the weird Norwegian teams that are a really good quality. So I have to keep changing. I've changed, if anyone has a look on the website, to a very, very defensive formation. Paul might be very impressed with that. It goes on his 5-5 formation, but goes even more defensive than that. I've had to go to that. All the changes. It's about adaptation. I've really enjoyed the adaptation and building on. And next season is looking even better. I have a loan from my hometown club of Coventry, and I'll put that on the website very soon. It's been fun.
Fantastic. No, it's good that, as you said, you've had back-to-back promotions. I kind of wish, just giving a brief update on my YouTube series, people who maybe haven't had time to follow it. I'm now in season 4 and have yet to win promotion. I can just imagine StatApp shaking his head in disappointment. I know Golden FM did. It's just, do you know when you have them saves, Mr. App, where you just kind of, you have success, you develop some fantastic talent, but you just can't get out of the bloody league.
Very much so, yeah. Well, firstly, before kind of cracking on with that, everyone can definitely refer to me as Luke rather than Mr. App. But
I can call you Luke for the rest of the show. I just some people like to go by their computerized name.
No, it's absolutely fine. But yeah, I think it really depends what you wanted to define success as within your save. It's with yourself, if you're developing players. I think the number one aim should be obviously to have fun. It's a game and something that people are doing in their spare time. So as long as you're having fun, it's good. I would always just stop playing any particular save if you weren't getting something out of it. But I think it was actually Golden FM himself said a little while ago. I can't remember if I was talking to him individually, if it was on a podcast or whatever the case may be. And he said he got a lot of feedback with one of his series where, because it was a lot slower, the progression to climb through the leagues, people enjoyed it more because they could relate to it, because not everyone's going to start at the bottom tier and kind of shoot through the leagues fairly quickly, back-to-back promotions and so on. Just, the average FM player who's watching some FM on YouTube found that more relatable, where it maybe took him 2, 3, 4 attempts to get out of some leagues. I think he was in the Championship for a handful of years, maybe more, and people were really, really getting into that, as I say, because they'd had similar struggles either in that version or previous versions.
I think that's you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. I don't know if it was last week I said it depends what you define success as, and it was mainly because somebody messaged me on YouTube and said, you've missed out on promotion again. Another failed season was the exact comment. Now what I said was, every single season so far my board has said to avoid relegation, and I finished smack bang mid-table every season, but I've been in the playoffs until the last 10-15 games, and either injuries or just general lack of form, and I don't know if it's because of experience, because currently my exact age of my midfield is 17, 16, 17, 21 and 22. So it's a young side, but I am, as you said, it's about having fun, and I am absolutely loving developing some of the youngsters I've got. Some of the players I've got genuinely could play league football, no problem whatsoever, and it's all about me just developing them and hopefully keeping them together. And I just feel in a couple of years I could get a couple of promotions back to back just because they develop into great players, which is definitely something you can relate to with some of the talent you brought through with Stamford and now with USV.
Yeah, that's right. I think from what you were saying there, and obviously just a couple of moments ago, it's something that I don't really experience that often. People have said, even with USV recently, obviously we can kind of jump into that in a bit more detail later on, but people have said, you'll find things, certain things relatively easy. That was said with Stamford as well. And I think the key to that is your challenge is a very obvious one, to develop players and then, of course, get promotion. But once you're getting promotions and doing well, then I guess there's almost an art in setting new challenges, because not only individually for me, but also for the audience, I always try and keep things front and center. What's the next challenge? What am I looking to do? Because otherwise it can become a little bit aimless, or it just does seem a little bit too easy. If you are getting lots of promotions, developing youngsters into absolute superstars, you need to think, well, for example, with Stamford, it was always try and win the most Champions Leagues, try and overtake Manchester United as the most successful team in England. With USV, it would be an even bigger challenge, competing with Bayern Munich and so on, because otherwise, if it's just get promoted, what you do once you've done that, there always needs to be kind of a short, medium and long-term goal.
I think that's it's correct. I mean, I did a save just quickly, just before FM16 came out. I was playing with St Mirren in Scotland on FM15.
Yeah.
And in the first season, I missed out on promotion back to the SPL, but I won the Scottish Cup, so I got into Europe. Second season, I won promotion, and then in the third season, I won the SPL. First season in the SPL, and I won it, and I was just kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do now. So I took part in the Champions League, did fairly well, didn't pull trees up, but did well for a team which really shouldn't have been there. Then I went down to England for half a season, but I just kind of didn't enjoy it. I kind of thought, should I have left? But then the Celtic job came up, and they were struggling because the St Mirren team I so quickly built somehow was still dominating Scotland. So I went up and took the Celtic job and ended up kind of regaining the SPL. And it's, as you say, setting yourself goals, just enjoy the save. And I think you said something perfect, which every listener can relate to and kind of take it on board, is if you're not enjoying the save, be it personal, be it a website save, be it a YouTube save, just move on. Just your audience or yourself, again, if it's just sitting in your bedroom playing the game, you're going to enjoy it much more if you literally just click that new game button if you're not enjoying the save you're doing.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm typically having really long saves every year, but general, I guess your everyday average FM player, if you're not blogging about it, if you're not doing it on YouTube or whatever the case may be, definitely a lot of wisdom in just starting a new save if you're not getting something out of it. But what's another really good point that you mentioned before? It's not something that I've done a lot of in recent times since recording content and so on, is moving clubs. I used to do it a little bit more in previous versions of the game, maybe 5-10 years ago. But if you are bored with a club, probably the first port of call might be resigning, trying to look for a new job within the game. But then the flip side of that is I know a lot of people really lose interest in the game once you get to the stage where there's where it's the majority of players are regens or new gens, whatever you want to call them, where they kind of lose the love for the game because there isn't that many real players left. Whereas personally, I prefer the game more the deeper into it you get, because it becomes more unique and you're not just signing the same generic wonder kids that everyone else is. It is different and personal to you.
Definitely. I mean, I was a moving club virgin until FM15. 18 years of playing Football Manager, Championship Manager, and I had never once went to a different club on a save. And then I just gave it a go, and it was fun. I enjoyed it, and then I decided to do a YouTube series doing it. And again, there was parts of it I loved, parts of it I regretted leaving. But as you say, give it a go. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you don't, you can start a new save. That's the joys of Football Manager. But I want to move on. I want to ask a question. So you've come on the podcast. We have people listening on iTunes, SoundCloud and YouTube. And I want you just to tell them, what is USV?
Well, it's my brand new YouTube series. It's called, the full title is You, Me, and USV. And what that means is you, the audience, me, obviously the manager, the person producing the content, and the club, USV. What it is, essentially, is an edited German database to have a fourth tier. So there's not just the Bundesliga 3, 2, and 1. There's also the fourth tier, that's the regional leagues. What I've done in terms of customizing things a little bit further is there was a club, or there is, I should say, a club called SSV Ulm, which I've rebranded to USV, which essentially in English would mean Ulm Sports Club. When I say rebranded it, we're talking new logo, new kits. I've even done a bit of a backstory with the president. So in Germany, the way ownership works, you don't get a standard takeover where a sugar daddy owner would come in and so on. So did all of that. In terms of the content itself, did a 45-minute or somewhere around that ballpark figure, previewing and explaining everything. So obviously I'm trying to condense that down as much as I can into a couple of minutes. And then from there, really, the story itself is, I guess, for want of a better way of describing it, a German equivalent of what I did with Stamford Struggle. So we're looking to come from the lowest playable league, in this case the regional German leagues, all the way to the top flight, with the end game or the end goal being competing at the top of the table, trying to compete in Europe, winning Champions Leagues, winning Bundesligas. I think what the real joy is going to be, or the real challenge is, I think it'll be even harder than in England, because Bayern Munich is so much more dominant than any team is in England, because, as we all know, this season more than ever before, at least a handful of teams, you would say, are in the title race this year. Or Leicester in the title race, but certainly both Manchester clubs, even people have touted Liverpool and Spurs, and of course Arsenal. Whereas in Germany, we know who's going to win the title. It's Bayern Munich. Dortmund have had a spell in the past, but I think that's going to be the real kind of the summit of the challenge, really trying to, I guess, get up to where Bayern Munich are right now and compete with them long term. So a very unique idea. It's what I've, I guess, been known for over the last couple of years at FM. With Stamford Struggle, it was similar in terms of rebranding and so on, because, like I touched on before about a unique experience with regens, I think this takes it kind of a step further. And USV aren't a made-up new club. I haven't used a create a club mode by any stretch. I've just rebranded and kind of put my twist on a current football club that have actually, in real life, been through quite a lot of financial difficulties and so on. So it's, hopefully it's so far going well. People have really, really enjoyed it in terms of the feedback, and I'm really enjoying producing the content, really passionate about the save. So yeah, hopefully I've explained that well enough in a couple of minutes. As I say, I did take 45 minutes or so waffling on the channel itself.
I think it was explained well. People listening on all the different avenues, you can find a link to the playlist in the description or in the notes section on iTunes. So just check that out. Just a bit of light-hearted fun with the USV. I want to ask you, are you happy with the stadium now? Because in Season 1, I know you mentioned your disgust of how the stadium looks. I thought it didn't look too bad.
Yeah, it's... I was probably a little bit harsh with that. It is fine, and I guess there's always going to be parallels in the early years with Stamford, and that was 12,500 until eventually, 20 plus seasons in, we eventually got a new stadium. So it's a luxury compared to what I was used to in FM15. But I guess it would be nice to get a new stadium down the line. But something I've talked about to my subscribers and the people who have been watching the series so far, that, and I'm sure more experienced players will be aware of this, what you don't want to happen in this type of save is get the board to build you a new season too early before you've had much success, because we've currently got a 19,500 seater stadium. If they were to build one tomorrow, hypothetically, that might be, say, 32,000. But if they were to build one 15 years down the line and we'd won a Champions League, it might be 60 or 70,000. So I'm hoping to be relatively patient and almost time it perfectly to get the best possible stadium we can. But if we go through anything like the type of troubles we did with Stamford, it could be 20, 30 seasons down the line. I hope not, but it's certainly plausible.
It's a good point. It's kind of a little bit of advice on the side there to kind of let people know don't ask the board too early to expand the stadium or to build a new stadium.
Well, yeah, that's right. I don't know if it's the same in FM16, but in previous versions there was kind of not a rule as such, but I guess an unwritten one, that it would take 20 to 25 years to get a new stadium once one had been built. So you're almost handcuffed to this new stadium, no matter how big or small it is, for 20, 25 years, obviously 25 seasons. And if it is quite small, you could see yourself as the most dominant team in Europe in a 30 or 40,000 seater stadium, when you could clearly fill out something double that. It's just because the stadium was built maybe 5 years too early.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Ryan, you've had kind of the same situation with your Egerton team at the minute. You've the board has been expanded every single season, it seems.
Yeah, every single season. I mean, twice it's been to live up to the season's rules, so stadiums had to be expanded. But now it's undergoing another expansion, which is costing them $2.5 million. Which
what capacity are we going to be looking at?
Going up to, I think it's 4,000 and something.
Ooh.
I don't know where they're expanding to. Considering I've been to Egerton Stadium, I think they're knocking down houses and maybe knocking down the hill.
Knocking down the hill behind the stadium's the only place to put a stand, I think. Well, just remember, don't ask them for a new stadium yet. Wait until you become dominant.
Oh, totally.
So, in terms of content on your channel, just to go back to the USV and your side of things, Luke, what's the plan? I know you've released a few, obviously, tutorial type stuff since FM16 come out.
Okay, so in terms of future plans for the channel, I would like to think USV will go on for the entire year. Of course, you can't predict the future too much, but that's my ambition and my aim at this stage. In regards to kind of special content over Christmas, I have been thinking about that recently. I made a real effort last year. I think I did maybe a 4-part special, something like that, of Q&As. But obviously a lot of YouTubers do question and answers for hitting a certain number of subscribers. Obviously in my case for Christmas. And really, yeah, I've gained a lot of subscribers since last Christmas, but I don't know how much value there would be in that in terms of another Q&A. So I'll have a think about that, but if not, there'll definitely be some sort of bonus content, if you like, coming up over Christmas. And then generally speaking, throughout the year, what I'm hoping to do is just dip in and out with some one-off content. So maybe some experiments in the January transfer window when there's some transfers, managerial changes, because that type of stuff always goes down really well, especially players being at new clubs, very easy to do, and a lot of subscribers and viewers really like that. So that'll spice things up for people who might not be watching USV. But generally, as I say, I'd be delighted if someone said, this time next year you'd be starting something in FM 17, but USV had run for the entire year. I would love that.
Fantastic. Hopefully it does. Now I'm looking forward to the experimental side of things, because I do like to see when transfers or when wonder kids move clubs, for example, the likes of Martin Odegaard in FM 15 when he appeared.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people did content with him, for example, and I think it's, as you say, some people like it, some people don't. It's all about personal preference.
Yeah, I think the great thing is, I touched on it there, that someone might not want to watch a series that's, even 5 seasons long. It's a lot of commitment, 10, 20, 30-minute episodes. But if you just want to see a one-off episode of Ibrahimovic at Chelsea that's 10, 15 minutes long, maybe even less with someone who's a little bit older like Ibra, you can just dip in and dip out. That hits the mark for a lot of people, and it's good to interact with a different type of viewer, different type of audience, because, as I say, I feel that it's very different, someone who wants to commit to a long-term series compared to someone who just wants to see a transfer or a managerial experiment.
Yeah, I think, what I will say is I actually promised somebody early on in the week, and I completely forget the Twitter handle, so I do apologise, but he asked me to reveal my Christmas content. I'm going to actually have to go back and remake some Christmas content, and this will make you laugh, Luke. So early on in the week I started recording a mini-series. Basically, I holidayed till December 31st, and took charge of the team in 20th in the Premier League.
Yeah, like a bottom of Christmas challenge.
Yeah. It was Leicester.
Right.
Now, I took over on 31st of December. On the 1st of December, Kasper Schmeichel broke his leg. Jamie Vardy ruptured something in his knee. And 2 of my midfielders picked up just 2-month injuries.
Okay.
And at that point I thought, really? So I dipped in the transfer market. I signed a new keeper, and I signed Kaka for 500k. I thought, well, he might create something, and I brought in Gary Hooper as my backup striker, just on loan.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of them picked up season-ending injuries in the first day. So that content got scrapped after I rage quit.
Right, okay. It sounds like quite a good watch, to be honest with you. Certainly something a bit different.
The worst thing is I actually recorded an episode as I found out about these injuries. So it would be great if people wanted to laugh at my reactions.
Yeah.
But that's the type of content I'm looking for over Christmas, if people are wondering. As you've said, a mini-series, and this is what people have asked me to do. But, there's limits. And when you're losing 6 players for the whole season on day 1, it just pushed me over the edge. And I just thought, I'll record it next week after my family's left.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, very much so.
But I want to move on to kind of just some interesting discussions. Again, this is people in the community who've asked us to talk about this, which is fantastic. And again, if people want to ask us to discuss things on the shows, just contact us on Twitter at FM_Central, or on YouTube, iTunes and SoundCloud. You can comment, you can leave a review and just say, I would also like to see this. Always happy to bring the discussions up. So one of the interesting things, I'm going to kind of skip forward to it, Luke, and it was talking about changing styles, and it's about moving clubs during saves, for example. So let's say you are USV, you are in the Bundesliga, you've been there for 10 years, and you see that Bayern Munich are finishing bottom on the possession stats, the passing stats, and so on, and they've turned into the Stoke City of Germany. Would you move to Bayern if the job came up to kind of reignite, to kind of change their style?
Well, I think in that example, I definitely wouldn't, just because of what my plans are for the series, and I would just want to stay at USV, kind of linking back to some of the long-term challenges that I was talking about before. But I guess generally speaking, if I was just playing an offline save or I wasn't doing anything on YouTube, I hadn't planned it in advance, that definitely sounds like something I would do. I think I probably have never done it before. I've certainly, in offline saves many moons ago, tried to, I guess, rescue a fallen giant. I remember leaving, I think it was Valencia I was managing, and moving to AC Milan because they'd been relegated to Serie B and wanted to get them back into the top flight and competing at the top. But certainly the style idea it's a really good one, because it's twofold. It's not only having success, but it's doing it in a certain way. And I'm assuming whoever asked the question, it's very topical because of, you pointed out there, Stoke. Arguably, I think the line in the media this week is Stoke are playing better football than Manchester United. And if someone had said that even a couple of years ago, you'd have kind of been laughed at, wouldn't you? When Pulis was still at Stoke, and obviously when Ferguson was at Manchester United, it was stark contrasts in style.
I think it's a credit to the way Mark Hughes has developed Stoke. They definitely play some interesting and beautiful football at times now, yet they still have the ruthlessness in defence and the defensive midfield I seem to see. It's passion, I think, as well, which is nice to see in football.
Yeah, very much so. I don't think Mark Hughes, generally speaking, plays the greatest football in the world, but I think a lot of it's the personnel that he's got. Bojan, obviously a really good player. Shaqiri as well. Obviously, you can only play a certain style or have a certain element of flair if you've got the players that can execute that, and he definitely does. But he doesn't play a bad football, and far, far better than, say, Tony Pulis. I've got nothing against what Pulis does. It's obviously effective for him, but it's not the most aesthetically pleasing. So Hughes comes out on top in that regard. And Stoke fans, I don't think this has been talked about too much, but their chairman, when he moved on from Pulis, a lot of people thought it was a risk, and the line was, bear the devil, what are they doing? Pulis has done a hell of a job at Stoke, where it obviously in hindsight was a great appointment, because he's changed the style quite a lot over recent years, and they're being at least as successful, if not more so, competing at a similar level in the Premiership, but certainly more entertaining for Stoke fans and the neutrals. So yeah, really, really good change, which I don't think we talk about that enough. We always hammer clubs for making bad managerial appointments or sacking managers at the wrong time, but I think this one's worked exactly as they wanted.
Yeah, definitely. I think I second everything you've just said, 100%. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to quickly go over to our online league. Now, I did a conversation with Ben from the online league earlier, so we will play that for you guys now to listen to, and you will join me and Luke again for discussion in a couple of minutes. So Ben, thank you for joining me on this lovely evening.
My pleasure.
So we're going to talk about the FM Central Online League, which you help run with a couple other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think best off is to start by introducing people to what the online league is, maybe go through the teams and basically just give me a quick explanation what it is, if you had to explain it to somebody who doesn't really know what it is.
All right, well, the idea behind it is to pit the best players in FM Central's community against one another in kind of a online competition that goes from week to week, so it's not kind of just a one-off thing. This is something we try and do over the course of a season, which takes about 11 weeks now each season, so we're hoping to get through at least 3 before the next game comes out. It's set up in a way that there's 2 divisions of 10 teams, and after that kind of little divisional league season, there's 2 competitions where the top 4 of each group goes into an elite competition, and the bottom 6 go into a smaller competition where there's less prize money, and an overall winner is decided then from each of them. And we just kind of go through that every season. And at this point, we haven't started the first season yet, but it's due to start today, Monday. And but we've just had a transfer window go by, and we're going to talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, fantastic. Can we just start by saying it's fictional prize money?
Yes.
I will not be diving in my pocket at the end of the season and giving out prize money to all the winners.
Not yet, anyway.
So I think best thing, as you've just said there, we've just had a transfer window before the season begins. As this goes live on Thursday evening for people listening, the season will have started, so you can obviously get it onto FM Central's Facebook group and ask how it's going. You can check out the website. The links will be below to get onto the website, and you cannot miss the online league this year. It's advertised all over the website. But the transfer window has ended, so John, just give people a little recap on what's happened.
Well, this year we did it a little differently from how we've done it in the past. Every team had an equal budget of £50 million. Values then were decided by the managers who were selling their players. So, for example, we had the Real Madrid manager selling Cristiano Ronaldo to Barcelona for £70 million, which you could probably suggest is actually quite a reasonable price, to be honest, in real market terms. But aside from that, we had a kind of like a transfer calculator for figuring out prices of players from outside of our teams, because we've only got 20 teams, of course, and there's a lot more than 20 in the real world, but a lot of players who our managers want from outside, like say John Stones or Iosi Perez or somebody like that. Anyone from outside of where it was given kind of an independent evaluation rather than a manager deciding for themselves. In total, I think Ryan calculated it as just over £1 billion being spent of fictional money, obviously, something like that. Anyway, but anyway, there was a lot of transfers going on in the few days that we did it. We had 118 players, I think, in total going into the clubs, and how many going out? 55 going out. So there's a lot of money sloshing around. Some managers didn't spend any money on, but most majority of them did.
Now I know there's a limit on the squad, and there's some rules on the squad. Now I know in the past, over the last couple of football managers, there's been some online leagues set up. Ours has been running since 2014. So this is the third year of Football Manager that this is actually running, Ben. So you have had time to iron out any creases and had chance to build up what obviously we think is the best online league out there. So there's some nice little rules, like you can only have so many players in your squad, you have to have so many youngsters to kind of keep it interesting, and not just mean you can't just go and buy 10 players to your squad and add them all in because you can't register them all, for example.
Exactly, that was exactly the point. We had we found towards the end of FM15, when we were really looking at the rules again and trying to figure out the best way to do it. We noticed that the bigger spending teams, or just the bigger teams in general, were hoarding players and then never using them. So let's just use a current example. Like a manager might sign Gabriel Barbosa and Andrija Zivkovic, and then just let them rot in the reserves, or Luka Jovic it was back then. But this time round we've reduced the squad sizes to 18 of any age, and then they get 3 free players who have to be 18 or under on the day of the start of the game, so July 1st. And that kind of makes sure that they have to plan, they have to think about who's going to be in their team and cover for injuries and suspensions and things like that. So it's not just a case of splash all your money and get the best players anymore, like it has been in the past.
Just so people know what's expected in the online league, could you just quickly run through the 20 teams which are going to be participating?
Sure. We've got 2 divisions, as I said earlier. And in the green division, we've got Roma, Bayern Munich, Benfica, Barcelona, Juventus, PSG, Real Madrid, Schalke, Tottenham, and Valencia. And in the red division, we've got Arsenal, Monaco, Atletico Madrid, Boca Juniors, Chelsea, Borussia Dortmund, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, and Napoli.
Fantastic. Definitely going to be something to watch throughout the season. I mean, there's already been some interesting things happen. Luka Modric moving club, then failing to be registered being one of them.
Yeah, that's we'll put that one down as a manager oversight, because of course, as we put in that you have to have a squad, then obviously you have to register players to be in that squad. And I think, bless his heart, Nicholas just forgot to include his star new signing in his squad, so sadly he didn't make it.
It's going to be something to watch, and Ben, you will be joining us each week to kind of just do a fixture recap.
Absolutely,
and, hopefully, maybe just pick a moment from the week which you want to give a special mention to. Try not to have it every single week. You going, well, what I did was.
Well, yeah. Well. Tell you what, my team is.
But I think it's going to be interesting, and as people say, people can come in. The weekly Football Manager show, we will now have, as I say, this 5-minute segment each week where we recap the online league. You can check it out on the website. You can pick a favourite team, follow that team. A special mention to James from the WizKids, who will be recording every game he plays, so you can follow Boca Juniors even closer on his channel.
Well, there you go. There's your first pick for this week then. Boca Juniors are up against Arsenal.
There you go. Boca Juniors versus Arsenal will be recorded and on James's channel, so it's definitely one to check out. So thank you for joining us, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Paul. No problem.
And now we will go back to myself in real time. Okay, so welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you follow the content weekly with our online league. Now, I hope you do enjoy just hearing who's doing well, what teams are doing well, and what players are doing well. Maybe you'll head over to our website, footballmanagercentral.com, and check out and start following your favourite club in our online league. But we're going to move on to discussing the central midfielders in Football Manager. Now, I think we work quite differently in this league, so it's going to be interesting. Basically, I've seen a lot of people kind of playing very defensive and very attacking midfield centres, but nobody actually holding the middle of midfield. I like to have a central midfielder who sits in the middle and he kind of links up the play. And I saw people posting on our FM Central Facebook group where they had roaming playmakers and advanced playmakers, deep line playmakers, either set to attack or defend, and it just felt like there was nobody in the middle. And I wondered, what's your view on the central midfield when you setting a tactic up?
Well, probably the best place to start is the 4-3-3 system or setup that I've got with USV at the moment. The central midfield 3 is just that, so it's 3 central midfielders, not a defensive midfielder or an attacking midfielder, literally 3 central ones, which is something I don't think I've done for a lot of years, certainly not in kind of the time that I've done YouTube. And those rules are, in the middle, I've got a ball-winning midfielder set to defend, so he's kind of the linchpin of it all, really, the defensive cover. And then to the left, I've got a deep-lying playmaker on support, so kind of a mix of the two. And then to the right, advanced playmaker on attack, so 1 support, 1 defend, 1 attack, which has worked fairly well. As I explained to people before starting USV, or as starting, I did a lot of testing, a lot of tweaking with the tactic, and it's worked great so far. But funnily, very recently, after reading Cleon's Art of Possession article, I'm tempted to tweak things further, maybe next season or the season after, dropping the ball-winning midfielder back to maybe an anchor man in defensive midfield, just to create that triangle and try and keep a bit more possession. Because even though we win quite a lot of games and have been fairly successful, one of my bugbears or gripes has been that we're not having the level of possession that I would be used to. And it's not a big deal, obviously 3 points are the most important thing, but it's just something that's left me a little bit puzzled, really, that we can win a game 3-0 but have maybe 42% of the ball.
Yeah, I think, personal preference, I'm not a fan of the ball-winning midfielder because I find he just kind of wanders off to make the tackle. And I think I like to have the defensive man midfielder to kind of drop back, but almost on a line in the middle of the pitch. So he'll drop deep and make the tackle, but he won't go and hug the touchline and make a tackle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want to play ball-winning midfielder, don't get me wrong. I think the idea of him is perfect, but I feel they just don't have enough control in the game. They just wander off and they go and have a chat with the assistant manager and they just don't stay where I tell them to. And it frustrates me. But yeah, I think it's just something I kind of just wanted to just ask, basically, how you set up your midfield, just because I think it's an issue a lot of people are having on the group as well at the minute, so hopefully it helps a few people.
Yeah, I think a general point I would make, I touched on it at the very start of the chat, that tactically this year things are much more challenging for a couple of reasons. One, the AI managers and AI teams are a little bit more intelligent in terms of reacting and be able to mix things up and counteract some of the things that we're doing as the kind of the human manager. They react to those and try and I guess try and get a result or make it harder for you. But also, I think in previous years, it was far easier to plug and play tactics. So someone can download one, get a lot of success, or almost out of the box play a 4-4-2, 4-3-3 with very little thought behind it and get a decent amount of success. Whereas I genuinely think, and I haven't tried this, but you could be, say, a Barcelona, Bayern Munich, whoever it may be, and go in without thinking too much about tactics and really struggle because you hadn't set things up correctly in terms of getting the best out of players because of rules and so on. So I think it probably goes further than just people struggling with midfield. I think my general perception of people's reaction to the game this year is it's just much harder to get things right tactically.
Definitely agree with that. But it makes it fun, and as you say, the AI is a lot more. It counters you a lot. I know James at the WizKids had the situation where he played the short corner, and after maybe 20 games of the season, he found that the man who came short was constantly getting marked, and he had to totally alter his corner tactic because he basically sussed it out. Yeah. I had the situation with my 5-and-5 tactic. I was changing my defensive midfielder to a deep line playmaker because he was just getting a lot of space. But they sussed that out, and before I knew it, they were man marking him from the off on every single game for 4 or 5 games in a row. I noticed this. Well. I genuinely like it. I like it when I get sussed out because it means I've got to do something, and it means I'm playing a game which is going to challenge me. As you said, you can't just plug and play.
Oh, definitely. This year, well, I think a good example is last year I created a couple of formations, a couple of setups for Bayern Munich before the game was even a full release, when it was still the beta version of the game, kind of when the public beta had been released, and I'd almost created those within half an hour in terms of the fundamentals, and then wrote about it and tested and tweaked it a little bit. But this year, even with my 4-3-3, it was days and days, maybe even a week before I felt comfortable that, right, this is the setup for me. I'm happy with the team instructions. I'm happy with the player instructions. And even now, just a few minutes ago, I was talking about tweaking it maybe at the end of this season. I think, and that's more realistic. In real life, you don't suddenly have a setup in a formation that you stick with forever. Look at Alex Ferguson. He built so many teams and had lots of different setups. So probably the best recent example is Pep Guardiola. He seems to have a different formation almost every single week at Bayern.
Players in different places. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing how your tactics develop as you either stay or move up divisions and see exactly what happens. But you talked about downloading stuff then. We had an interesting discussion earlier. You mentioned about the Steam Workshop, and it's something which I've never gone on and used. I think I've maybe gone on it once, and actually downloaded something on it. And I think it was the Martin Odegaard add-on that Sports Interactive added last year. So what am I missing?
Well, to be honest, there's nothing on the Steam Workshop that you wouldn't be able to get from, for example, your website, from FM Sentinel, or any of the other really big ones, or just ones people would be familiar with. But I think the great thing about it is, and people underestimate this, that a lot of people would struggle with how to import a shortlist into the game, or how to install a skin, how to install whatever the case may be, any of the add-ons that you could name. Now, if you signed into Steam, into the account, and you go on to the Steam Workshop for FM16, you can literally click the subscribe button and it downloads it into your game. 9 times out of 10, that'll work no problem. And then bang, you've got it in your game straight away. So a really simple example, and something that's been popular. It's the only thing I actually released last year on Steam, but I released it straight away this year, is my custom squad view, where it's just got a lot of additional information compared to the standard selection squad view. you can just press the subscribe button and then straight away it's in your game. Every now and again you might have to restart it if it doesn't quite work. Whereas if it was, say, on your website or whatever website, you'd have to download it, unzip it or extract it, put it into the correct folder, which for myself or you, that's probably very straightforward. But for some people, they would either need step-by-step instructions or they would obviously rather just one click and it's job done. So that's the main benefit, I would say. But also all of the content's in one place. It probably appeals to a different audience as well. Some people who were commenting and asking about the content I've got on there. So my shortlists, my selection, or my squad selection, a few other bits and bobs I hadn't really interacted with before because, as you'll know, a lot of people aren't aware that there's a thriving FM YouTube community or blogging community, whereas everyone knows of Steam if you've got FM because you need to, have a Steam account and so on.
Very true. I think I will have to check it out, even if it's just to put some of my stuff on there.
No, definitely. As I say, it really opens a door to another audience, and there's not really many people. I think myself, Jack, who's worked the space, he's got some content on there as well. But outside of that, most of the people making content are people I'm not really familiar with. It's not as though I'm seeing the same people who are using your website and uploading content or some of the other websites. It's literally just people I'd never heard of before. That's what I mean. It's almost a little niche area of the FM community. So I would definitely suggest everyone having a look. At least it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll check it out later on this evening.
Yeah.
Talking about custom squad views, I think this is the perfect time for me to have a little bit of a rant.
Right.
There was an issue on all previous Football Managers, and I would like to announce that it is back. Now, bear in mind, I'm running on, I think it's 1980 by 1020 or whatever the resolution is. So my screen's fairly large. Yet, if I add some stuff, there's plenty of room on my screen, but it cuts it off in the right-hand corner and it physically doesn't allow me to drag it across. I have to make sure anything I want to add on my custom view has to be put before value, which is my last... like the last column I have is the value of the player.
Yeah.
If I add anything after that, it disappears off the screen and I can't see it. And I can't drag it further on. And I can't move any of the others along to get it on. And this issue was reported last Football Manager and the Football Manager before, and they've still got the issue. And I don't know if it's something you've ever struggled with, but it's very frustrating at times.
Yeah. To be honest, I set up my custom view this year fairly quickly, but I think certainly in the previous version I had something similar because I remember having to have a column inserted at the end of the entire selection view and almost using that as a blocker, for want of a better phrase, inserting everything else before that, getting it in the right order, getting everything spaced, then removing that blocker column and then just saving the selection. What I've found this year though, and I don't know if it happened last year, I really can't remember, every now and again, once every, few hours or 6 months game time, whatever the case may be, the squad selection it's not the squad screen, it's actually the tactics screen where you get the 1 to 11 and then your subs. I've got a custom version of that as well, and every now and again that'll just kind of look different. The columns will be different, maybe something will be missing, and not only will I have to refresh it, I'll have to remove the custom view and then re-import it, and that does kind of almost a hard refresh. Otherwise, I just can't get it looking how it previously did. And as soon as I re-import it works perfectly, but I must have done that maybe 20, 30 times since getting the game. It's very, very strange.
I'm actually glad you've said that, because there's a couple of times where that same thing has basically happened to me, and I will look at my screen and think in my head, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
Has that changed, or has it always been like that and I've just never noticed? So I think it is but let's look at it this way. We are talking about now the smallest little detail, and I think that is credit to Sports Interactive at how good Football Manager 2016 is. That the rant for myself this week is that I can't move a box along.
No, definitely. I said earlier that I'd refer to it as polished, and I think, as you said there, if it's just inconsequential things like this that are more a little bit of a hassle rather than, game-breaking bugs or anything like that, then everyone's happy. There's very few things. I don't think I could list many at all that have really disappointed me, that something missing or something isn't working correctly. And if it's, as I say, just a selection view or whatever the case may be, that's pretty small change compared to in previous years where there's been some really, really terrible things wrong with the game.
Yeah, definitely. But that's the end of the show this evening. Time flies when you're having fun.
Huh.
So I want to thank you for coming on. Really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy evening. And I hope we have been acceptable for you.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed listening. I've enjoyed being a part of it. If people want to check out the stuff, I know you said you'd linked it before, but you can just type StatApp in YouTube or at Statistical Approach on Twitter. If you've got any questions about the content and so on, or just about FM in general. Normally, if someone asks me a question or just wants a chat about FM or football, I'm always around.
Fantastic. I want to apologise for Ryan. He has dropped me a message. His housemate turned the internet off. So that's why he left us halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just remind people, if you do listen on SoundCloud or iTunes, just to drop some stars, get us up that ranking list. I did find us in the rankings the other day, which was very exciting to see. So thank you, people who are commenting or leaving reviews. On YouTube, drop a like, drop a comment, let us know what you thought of the show. And we will see you on Monday for Beyond the Touchline, or next Thursday for the Weekly FM show, which has 2 special guests. One of them is confirmed, and the other one more than likely will come on. The confirmed guest is second yellow card, so get excited for the next guest.